we are the Catskill Regional Teacher Center. We provide professional support and resources for all teachers throughout their professional development years. So you guys, as either teachers coming in or you SUNY Oneonta students wanting to be teachers, as soon as you tell us that you're interested in becoming teachers, we open up our facility to you. So you are welcome to come down and borrow any of our resources, participate in any of our professional development programs. I will send out, I will try to get you on, well, actually, I will have to think about how I will connect you to, so you know what professional developments we have available. We want to nurture and support your love of learning. We support all teachers, both in the private schools and the public schools. And there are 122 teacher centers found throughout New York State. So for the most part, no matter where you go to teach, you will find a teacher center that will support your efforts. The last thing I wanted to mention about that was that we don't care if you're in a public school or a private school. And oh, there was another piece that I wanted to mention, but I can't remember what it was now. Anyway, if you want more information, just contact me there. And like I said before, I will try to contact all of you so you'll have my email information. All right, I want to introduce today's panelists. We have Jim Smith. He is a social studies teacher from Edmonston, New York. Edmonston's a small rural school district. And he is one of what, two social studies teachers out there, Jim, in the high school?
Yes, 2 in the high school.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of how small the district is. And we appreciate Jim coming out to do this with us. The other panelist we have is Nicole Waid, and I think most of you guys on the call on this meeting know who Nicole is. Nicole, do you want to make a quick introduction?
Hi, I'm Dr. Waid. If you haven't had me, you will. I'm looking forward to talking about the Constitution with you all today. If you feel compelled, you can tweet during Constitution Day, hashtag Constitution Day 2020, hashtag SUNY Oneonta. Let them know that we are participating, maybe at a limited function as the rest of the SUNYs. We had a little bit of a virus go through campus or something.
Nicole, could you put that hashtag in the chat box?
Very good.
Oh, did you? I missed it. All right. At the very top of your chat window, I did put a link to a text version of the Constitution if anybody needs to reference that. All right, Valerie, I'm going to turn this over to you so you can talk a little bit about the program that you have running from the Daily Star.
Hi. So my name is Valerie Secor. Those of you that don't know me, I'm the advertising director for the Daily Star. I've been with them for about 5 years now. About 4 years ago, we started doing this essay contest. The theme changes, but we usually cover the Constitution or presidents, or we want the kids to be involved in government, essentially. So this year, the topic of our essay contest is, what does the Constitution mean to you? We did the same topic 4 years ago because during an election season, it seems to go over really well. So there's a flyer here up on the screen. If anybody wants this, I'm happy to send this over to you. But this is the flyer that was sent over to the different school districts that are in our readership area. It's just outlining the contest itself. So the contest is for 7th through 12th graders in the 32 schools in our coverage area. So that's going to be Otsego, Delaware, Schoharie, and Shenango County schools. We also have an adult category for any adults that want to participate. We always get a few submissions from adults, but it's primarily a contest for students, which is why I'm here today, because I would like for the teachers to be involved. That's the best way that we're going to get participation from the students. So the topic is
on board.
I'm sorry, what?
Edmonston is on board.
Yes, Edmonston is always on board. I love it. So the topic is, what does the Constitution mean to you? The Daily Star is publishing the text of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And on the back of that Constitution, not a treasure map like you've seen in movies, there is an outline of the essay contest itself. So that's going to be running in the Daily Star, the Cooperstown Crier, and the Weekly Star. I also have a link to that publication for anybody that wants that to send to their students. Typically what happens is the schools will reach out to us and let us know how many copies of the Constitution they want for their students. That way they can use that as a resource for the essay itself. With a lot of our school districts being remote right now, I understand that that's going to be a little bit more difficult. That's why we've posted it online, and you can just send the link to the Constitution to your students, and that way they can go onto our website and do that for free. So anybody that wants that, my information is in the chat box. The criteria for the essay contest, it needs to be around 500 words. It needs to answer that question, what does the Constitution mean to you? And it needs to be sent to me by the deadline, which is October 16th. As long as I have it by 11:59 p.m., it's going to be accepted. Those essays are then split up between different members of our staff and all different departments, and we begin the process of eliminating maybe some of the little bit weaker essays so that we can start to figure out who those winners are. We will select 3 winners from each grade, 7th through 12th, and 3 adult winners. Those students will not only receive $50 from the Daily Star as their prize, but they will have their essays published in a tab that runs on October 30th. So my contact information is also on this flyer here. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. This is one of my favorite things that we do. And, you know, I've got a 13-year-old boy who can't really enter the contest, but I'm excited that the schools are getting children, you know, that age involved and that we can be a part of that. So that's it.
Awesome. Now we have several college students on this meeting. Would they be able to apply for the adult one?
Oh, absolutely. And the more the merrier. Like I said, we picked 3 winners for each category, and I think last time we did this, we only had 3 adults. So I'd like a little bit more competition in that category if we could.
All right, that sounds wonderful. Thank you for joining us. All right. Well, now I have to see my own screen. So I just wanted to remind everybody that we are here to grow minds, not change them. That means we should be respectful at all times, listen actively with your heart set on understanding others' views, commit to learning, not debating. Please feel free to use the chat bar for ideas, questions, any of that kind of stuff. And there's a little hand feature. If you want to use that as well to notify that you'd like to talk, that would be fantastic too. And I will try to do my best to pay attention to those various things. All right, so here is the video on what is Constitution Day. Whoop. Ah, where did it go? There it goes. Okay.
Citizens of the United States have celebrated Independence Day and President's Day since the 1870s. And in 2005, the nation began to celebrate Constitution Day, also known as Citizenship Day. Constitution Day is an American holiday.
I'm going to pause it because it's clearly not playing the way I wanted it to. So I'm going to go to YouTube and do it from there. See if I have it there. Nope. There it is. And then I can enlarge. I had one of those persistence bars getting in my way.
The United States have celebrated Independence Day and President's Day since the 1870s. And in 2005, the nation began to celebrate Constitution Day, also known as Citizenship Day. Constitution Day is an American holiday honoring the day 39 delegates to the Constitutional Convention signed the United States Constitution. This historic date was September 17th, 1787. In 1939, William Randolph Hearst, who owned many newspapers in New York City, was the one who first suggested that a national holiday be created to celebrate Constitution Day. Hearst's plan was well received, and they created the holiday. At that time, it was known as I Am an American Day. It was celebrated as the third Sunday in May. Later, Olga T. Weaver came along, and in 1952, she petitioned the leaders to change the day from that day in May to the day that the Constitution was signed, which is why now we celebrate Constitution Day on September 17th, after Olga T. Weaver brought that change September 17th of 1952. Louise Lee was the creator of Constitution Day Incorporated, and she made this day become a federal holiday, which President Bush signed in 2005. So it was officially celebrated at the federal level for the first time in 2005 because of the work of Louise Lee. She was quoted as saying, "How can a nation preserve the freedoms guaranteed in the Constitution if the people are unaware of what they want?" Louise wanted the people to understand that the Constitution gives the ultimate power back to the people. She wanted the people to be sure and understand that. Importantly, she wanted to make sure that there were programs in education to inform our students of the importance of the Constitution.
All right. Let's see. Get out of there. All right, so then we'll do a quick overview of the Constitution itself. Nicole and Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Don't forget to unmute, Jim.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, Nicole. Ladies first. You take what you want, and then I'll jump in.
All right, my friends. I don't know when's the last time you read the Constitution. Today's Constitution Day. It might be a good idea to know, as a social studies teacher, a future one, what the parts of the Constitution are. We start with the preamble. I used to do this assignment with my students every year, and I would hear students humming Schoolhouse Rock. I would give them a quiz on the preamble, and that's how my students would learn the preamble. Do you guys remember Schoolhouse Rock, the preamble? That's how I had my students remember it. You teach that to seniors, they're gonna remember it. And so we start off with the preamble. It sets up all the things that we want to do. It's like giving almost like an introduction to what is to lay beyond that, and that's going to be the rest of the constitutions. We have the articles 1 through 7. The first one is dealing with the legislative branch. Number 2, the executive. 3, the judicial. 4, states. 5, methods of amendments, assumption of debt, ramification, and amendments. There are several parts, and if you are, it's like a roadmap for our Constitution, and it's been intact for so long. And if you had a question about what is the role of the legislative branch, if you go to the articles, you will be able to find exactly the roadmap of what our Constitution is supposed to be. The Constitution provides rights to people, but it also protects rights from the government. And that is a general overview of the Constitution. I recommend, by the way, you social studies people, give your students a Constitution scavenger hunt, just to get them used to the structure of the Constitution.
Did you want to add anything else there, Jim? Let me jump in real quick. I know there's a couple of people that just jumped on in the last couple of minutes. If you could please put your name and your email in the chat box so that I have a contact information for you later. All right, Jim, what else did you want to add?
Just to kind of piggyback off from what Nicole has said, got to stress that in that original document, of course, it's the preamble and the articles. The Bill of Rights, the amendments follow later on because the Anti-Federalists, of course, very concerned about rights, and the Founding Fathers were good to their word. I do a lot of situational type things. Like I provide them with situations so they've got to think like a legislative member or someone hoping to be a legislator, an idea for an amendment. I haven't done that in a while, but that was an assignment I've used in the past where they had to come up with an idea and then explain the process to put that into the Constitution, trying to get the students to realize that it's not as easy as they may think. You know, there's only 27 over 200 some years. Sometimes I found in teaching the Constitution, students get overwhelmed thinking, oh my God, 7 articles, 27 amendments. So I try to go with little tricks like Articles 1, 2, and 3, branches of the government, or, 4, 5, and 6 in the amendments, rights of the accused. I'd like to think I've had pretty good luck. I've been teaching 11th grade for quite a few years. I'll just put it that way. If you can see the gray in my beard, it may give you an indication. But I'd like to think it's gone well. And one other trick that I always do is I spend extra time on it in the fall with my 11th graders. And then I keep coming back to it with that situation theme, like when we do George Washington and talk about his role as commander in chief and sending troops out with the Risky Rebellion, or with Jackson. I could go off on Jackson. I'm going to try not to, but same thing as the executive branch, and different things as they pop up. So I could talk all day about the Constitution. Aaron knows I like to talk, so I'll be quiet now.
All right, thanks, Jim. All right, so the first question. What is your favorite story? There's so many of them related to the creation of the Constitution. We'll start with Jim.
I would say I'm big on the Federalist Anti-Federalist debate. I love the fact I'm not a big fan of politicians. No offense if anybody else is, but politicians are not my favorite people. And I always bring up the fact, and it's not all, there are a couple out there I can think of in Albany that I like. But anyway, I always bring up the fact that the Anti-Federalists had very strong feelings about the rights. And lo and behold, Hamilton and friends promised basically. So that's my favorite story, that in creating the Constitution, they were true to their word. They went back and added the Bill of Rights.
Hi, Nicole.
I was going to say that the thing that inspires me about the Constitution, and I think that we could learn from it today, is that there was not a bigger debate than Federalists versus Anti-Federalists. And they had a different vision for America, but they wanted to have this document for everyone. So they compromised. They had to make compromises to make it happen. And I think that in the spirit of compromise, that our nation was born out of compromise. And I think that we've lost sight of that fact in 2020, and that people don't want to compromise their positions so much, but just the fact that we have a process to amend our Constitution, I think is pretty powerful. And I think that if we think of government in terms of never compromising as a sign of weakness, we better go look back at the Federalists and Anti-Federalists.
All right. Does anybody else want to add anything to that?
Can I chime in with that?
Absolutely.
Great point with compromise. I'm a big fan. He's passed away now, but I'm a big fan of Shelby Foote. And if you're familiar with the Ken Burns work in Civil War, Shelby Foote's got the famous quote about America is built on compromise. And compromise is huge, no doubt about it. And developing the Constitution shows that, with the Great Compromise, the 3/5 Compromise, how long the president's going to serve, etc.
Okay, anybody else have anything to add? I always think that hearing the stories about the conditions under which they met were fascinating. It was a very hot, stifling summer, right? That's my understanding. And
That's
of
correct.
course, they're wearing the getup of their day, so one can only imagine what the smell and the odors must have been like. And my understanding is that they would not open the windows because they didn't want passerbyers to hear what they were going to be saying. And so I can only imagine what the conditions must have been like. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Well, it was highly secretive from everything I've read and stuff. And with what you said, Aaron, it makes sense that they don't want the word out to incite panic or who knows what. So it's important.
Ah. Sam, did you want to add to that comment you made?
I just said I just think that it was a fix for a mistake. So like whenever I think of the Constitution, I think how it was essentially like we talk about compromise, but it was also like it was a critique essentially, or a complete critique overhaul of like a Constitution that was like completely ineffective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you mean that I'm fixing the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation?
Exactly. So like
Yeah, I knew what you meant.
yeah,
I knew what you meant. Yeah, and some of my people, what were some of the weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation that the Constitution tried to fix?
I'm just gonna say one that I remember. It was about like war debts and like the regulation of money, like commerce.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's one of the things that
And
happened.
and the representation of Senate and House of Representatives based on state and population.
The New Jersey plan and the Virginia plan.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are two big things that the representation. Also, there was a rebellion in Massachusetts. Does anyone know the name of the rebellion?
Shays Rebellion.
Shays Rebellion. Good job, Rob. And Shays Rebellion. What did it highlight to the in the Articles of Confederation? We had this big rebellion.
It highlighted that we didn't have an army to stop it.
I missed what you said.
I said it highlighted that we didn't have an army to stop the rebellion. Sorry, there's a lot of.
Yeah, we didn't have, there were some weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. That was certainly one of them. But they were trying to fix some of the mistakes that they had in the Articles of Confederation. They found that having like a weak federal government, we found that there were some issues with that when we start to see some things like Shays Rebellion. For example, there's other things too, but Shays Rebellion always stuck out with me and stuck out with my students.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole, but that's not, they didn't come with the intention of creating a new document. They just came in the hopes to fix the articles, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they tried, and then the Federalists wanted a strong federal government, and the states don't. And even in 2020, we see people who want to have a stronger federal government, and we have people who like would rather defer to states' rights. So this is not an issue that people are like saying, you know, just because we have a constitution, the arguments didn't go away necessarily. We still have people who are arguing for states' rights, and they did throughout history.
I just can only imagine what that conversation was like to get rid of the form of government that they came in to fix, to say, oh no, we're not going to bother fixing this. We're going to create something brand new. All right. We're going to move on to the next question. Nicole, we're going to start with you. What do you wish everyone understood about the Constitution, or what misconceptions do you think most people have about the Constitution? And I forgot a question mark.
This was the first assignment I ever gave when I taught my high school career. The idea that it's a living document. I think that people think of it as a historic document, and it certainly is, but it's also a living document in that it's the framework of our government right now, and in the fact that we can amend it to change for times that are different. We have a living document here. The stuff that's included in it, we are protected by it. We can be vocal about the government without worrying about going to jail. We can make sure that we can assemble peacefully, and we have the right to do so. We have the right to bear arms, and that is in the Constitution. Some people claim that if one side or another gets voted in, you're going to lose your constitutional rights. Just think about the number of amendments that we have right now. I mean, in our whole history, we have so few amendments. It's a really hard thing to get an amendment passed. And I think that we can make amendments, but like, you're not going to probably lose a lot of your amendments. If you've been hearing that, it's not very likely that someone's going to make a repeal of, like, let's just say for the sake of argument, the Second Amendment. To know that the process of trying to repeal the Second Amendment, for example, it's just not a rational thing. But I think that people, when they say your right to do this will be gone, your right to do that will be gone, to do some of these things, they would have to amend the Constitution again, and it is a really high bar to amend the Constitution. If it wasn't, we would have a lot more than we do.
Thank you, Nicole. Jim, what did you want to?
Well, I would say for me personally, as far as what they have misconceptions or wish they would understand, over at Edmiston, my former counterpart in social studies, and now my current, meaning the guys who taught global, and then the students come to me as 11th grade. They do a great project on Declaration of Human Rights. And so I get students who more or less think everything's universal. So freedom of speech means freedom of speech. And so I have to break some of them into reality and say, okay, yeah, you have freedom of speech, for example, but assuming we're in a non-COVID world, you go off to a theater, and in the middle of the theater, just to get a rise out of people or a reaction, yell fire or gun, and it's a panic, and some poor person gets trampled, injured, and you're the one who yelled fire or gun, you're responsible. And so right away, somebody always says, oh, you have freedom of speech, Mr. S. Yes, you do, but. So, and then we talk about the newspapers with freedom of the press. And of course, they always bring up the National Enquirer or somebody along those lines. And then I always say, well, they can't tell lies. They can't publish lies, basically. The whole slander libel sort of stuff. And I said, if somebody wanted to challenge and they've got the evidence, whatever, there you go. You're all set. So I think my concern, my misperception that bothers me is the universal. It's there, but it's not always there. Just got to keep that in mind.
So does anybody from the audience have any stories or components that they want to share? No, we're going to move on to the next question then. Oop. If you could change an aspect of the Constitution, what would it be and why? So we'll start with Nicole.
Oh, if I could change one thing about the Constitution, I would, there's a couple things I would do. I would take a look at voter engagement. I think voting is a really important thing that we fought for years. Who was the guy who marched, my students?
John Lewis.
John Lewis. Gosh, gotta love John Lewis. John Lewis marched for these things. But unfortunately, we still have some issues with how we elect our president. One of the issues that some people have a problem with is, let's just say that California has 40 million people and they get 2 senators. There's like 12, you could put 12 states together. And so that would be 12, I think it's like 24, like the size of California has 2 senators, and then they have like a dozen other states that account for California. So some people are, there's a movement that people would like to eliminate the Electoral College to make it more so it's more about one person, one vote type of thing. Like if you live in an agrarian society in the Midwest, when you get to the electors, it seems weird to some people. It's like, well, if they win the popular vote, shouldn't they win? There was a popular vote compact that people have been signing over the years. They have to get a certain amount of people to sign on to it, different states. They're not that far off, actually. If they wanted to, there are states that have signed on to the compact over the years. New York is one of them, actually. But that is one thing I would change, has to do with protecting our elections. I am in favor personally of taking a look at the Electoral College, but also I would like to see a reversal of Citizens United versus the FEC changed by a constitutional amendment about finances in elections. I think that if you take the money out of politics, it will become far less corrupt.
Okay. Jim, what's your thoughts?
Well, I agree on the finance one. That's a very good point to bring up. One thing that I would say that I would change or consider changing, in addition to what Nicole has said, is maybe with the president in mind. I know 4 years may seem like, that's fine. It's worked all these years and so on. But maybe if I could change something, I would change the length of term. Maybe instead of 4 years, make it 6. So that way, perhaps a little more could happen with trying to accomplish things and such. I'm still supportive of term limits, so I wouldn't change that angle. But maybe to get more done, I would change the length of term. Just like, although it can't happen at the federal level because they're state representatives, I believe in term limits for members of Congress, the House and Senate. So maybe there needs to be an amendment in that regard.
Yeah.
So that's my thing.
There was another thing that I would change. Now I can't remember what it was. Oh, there's another amendment that we kind of forget about. You probably learned about it probably in May in your junior year. You probably heard about the Equal Rights Amendment and how it did not pass. Are you aware that they're like one state away from being able to pass the ERA?
That's true. That's very true.
Yes, and the one state that they're looking at to be the deciding factor is Virginia. And Virginia has a Democratic state house right now. So Equal Rights Amendment, I would be remiss if I, as a woman, come on, equal rights, baby.
All right, somebody from your class has got to have a weigh in on this one. If you could change an aspect of the Constitution, what would it be and why? Any brave souls out there?
Oh, come on, we're all friends here.
No? All right, well, go on. I thought that was a good question.
Is this thing on?
So what do you think the framers got wrong?
Oh, boy.
Jim, you want to answer that one?
Oh, that's a good question, Aaron. What did the framers get wrong? And I go back and forth with the Electoral College. I'm a big believer, well, you know, I'm at a small school, so I'm a big believer in the small states. And if you eliminate the Electoral College, it would, in my opinion, put the focus on a big state like a California or a Texas. But then again, you know, I believe that ultimately people are good and such. So if I'm going to run for president, I'm going to go to Delaware just as much as I would Texas if I felt they needed to see that I would support them and such. But aside from that, I would say, I have to think. Maybe put even more control in Congress. I don't know. You know, the Congress has to approve appointments, you know, make the laws, etc. So maybe try to put more in the hands. It's been a long day for me, so you caught me off guard with that one.
I think I got one though.
Go for it.
The time they made a race of people 3/5 of a human being.
Excellent. Yes.
That's what I was going to say. That's why my hand was raised. I think the 3 compromise would be like.
I think that was.
That's a good point. That's a slap in the face of a human being.
Because the thing is, I'm a sarcastic, you know, I speak out a lot. I'm very vocal. And someone's like, well, we don't have a racist government. I said, I think you're wrong, but I am only 3/5 sure.
I like a straight shooter. Thumbs up.
So yeah, that's what I would say they got wrong.
But
and another thing I would think, see, here's the thing. It's great to look back in hindsight. Our society, our 18th century society is not the same society as we have in the 21st century. So we can look back at this brilliance. I think that James Madison is a genius, an absolute genius.
I would agree to that.
And I just think that they were learned individuals, and for 18th century America, I think this was something that was revolutionary. But as time progressed, we start to look through a different lens and say, oh, do we really want to say 3/5? We don't want to say things like that. But the good news is sometimes history bends, you know, and people get extended rights. So we do get people who have to be enfranchised, not disenfranchised in the vote.
Okay, anybody else want to add anything? I sure wish the Second Amendment was clarified better.
When I get my students and they're getting ready to go out student teaching, I prep them for interview questions, and I ask them if they could talk to any one person in history, living or dead, who would it be and why? And my answer is James Madison, because I would like to ask him his rationale for the Second Amendment. What was his intent? Yeah. And maybe if we could give them notes from today and say, hey, they have these guns, and you just push it, and then it can just do a ton of rounds. It would be unheard of, because the weaponry in 18th century certainly isn't what it is today. And we do have militias, but I don't think it was the militias that the founders intended.
No. Yeah, it definitely is not very clear of what he meant with that one.
But I got to tell you, Aaron, with what you're saying about clarity, that's one of the things that makes it a beautiful thing, in that interpretation is different. And then with a compromise angle, you know, we could go around and around, but we can still talk, hopefully, you know. So I agree with what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but I also like the fact that it's always subject to interpretation, subject to the times, whether it's the 1700s or present day.
Sure. Yeah. We don't know what the future is going to bring. There might be some kind of weaponry in the future that we would feel the exact opposite over, that we should all, whatever. Yeah, it could be very different.
The drones. Think of the drones. The drones are a great example. What the drones could do.
Yeah.
I think that if the Second Amendment wasn't quite so, the way it was worded, shall not be infringed, it makes it really hard, and people get the shall not be infringed. Well, there are some things. The purpose of the Constitution is to protect people's rights, and then we talked with the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. If you shoot someone, you're taking away their right to life and pursuit of happiness. So I think that sometimes people take such a literal interpretation of the Constitution sometimes. And I think that with a living document that's lived for centuries, we have to like try to have a loose interpretation sometimes. But it's funny how people are very, they're apt to take a literal reading of something, and then they'll take a very loose reading on something else. So.
Thomas Jefferson.
Yep.
All right, so if you could change an aspect or an idea of the Constitution, and what would it be and why? Let's start with Nicole this time.
I would define offenses better for grounds of impeachment. They only mention one. They spell out what treason is, and I really recommend that people go and look up what treason actually is, because people throw around treason so much. Go to the Constitution; it's right there. It couldn't be clearer. But unfortunately, we put in high crimes and misdemeanors. And then we talk about treason. Well, what are the other ones? What other ones fit? Because if you look at just the Constitution, you'd think, okay, well, treason. And then I think that people just have a very big misunderstanding of treason. Just go read the Constitution, it's right there. But I wish they would have more criteria. See, I think that the founders just couldn't anticipate certain things happening. They had a way to remove a president, but it's a very unclear situation, and it just seems like no progress is ever made because people can't decide the interpretation of the Constitution. So I think if I would like it to be more specific in certain areas and less specific in others. Like the Second Amendment, less. I think it leads. I think that some of the debates are not going to be won, and I'm not for the repeal of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is not going to be repealed. It takes a lot to be repealed, but I think that the absolute language in some of the amendments and the loosey-goosey parts in the other, I think it would be a lot easier to see. Is like, and we hear things about constitutional crisis and stuff. Well, what constitutes a constitutional crisis? What do you do in a constitutional crisis? We don't know. So when we get to a constitutional crisis, we're like, we're in a constitutional crisis. Okay, what do you do? What do you do? We have a system of checks and balances. What happens if they're not checking the power?
Yeah. Jim, what's your thoughts?
Well, if I could change an aspect or an idea, I might say, you think about that one. Well, bring up the election. Every year, whether it's a presidential year or a non-presidential year, there's always the discussion about election day. And it's noted as, such and such Tuesday in November.
One day.
And that's it, nothing else. And then there's always the talk about how sad it is that more people don't vote and such. So maybe if I was to be put on the spot and support a change, maybe my father would probably slap me side the head for saying this, but maybe make Election Day a holiday. And, that would get the voter turnout up higher. I've voted ever since I was 18 myself, but I know there's people out there that don't vote because they're busy or, it's not going to matter and things like that. But I've always felt that if you don't take advantage of the opportunity, then it snowballs and everything. So maybe try to meet in the middle and make make it make election day a holiday. That would be my idea.
So I'm curious if either one of you know, why did they pick that day for election day?
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not really sure either.
It's kind of an odd time, right? Like, especially back then, you don't have great means of transportation. So you are starting to hit into winter weather, especially in the north. So you would think it would be hard to get out to vote. Why would they have picked that time period?
I don't know. That's a good question. I've never been asked that one.
And somebody's got a question in the chat. Oh yeah, go ahead, Brandon.
I was just wondering, what are your opinions on lowering the age to vote? Because more and more every year, more teenagers are more investing into politics.
That's a very good question, Brennan, because I just saw an article within the last couple of days. Some state is at least considering lowering the voting age to 16. And my initial reaction is more power to them. I would hope that they jump on the opportunity. But if you look at the stats, since the 26th Amendment has passed, that voting age group of 18 to 21 is not very strong. The numbers are not very high. And I believe, in my opinion, part of the reason why Amendment 26 was passed was to encourage younger people to take action. So I would support it personally, but if the 16 and 17-year-olds out there would act on it is another question.
I've taught this age group, like 18-year-olds. I taught in that age range for so long. I think that some people would know what they were talking about to have the right to vote. Others, I don't know, but I know one thing: if did not vote was a candidate in 2016, it would have won the election in a landslide, and that's a dangerous thought, isn't it? Did not vote would have been the winner of the election, hands down.
Yeah.
What can you guys do out there, my friends?
Well, I mean,
Go ahead.
here's a rebuttal to that, because I hear a lot of people talking about low voting rates and stuff, and there's a good argument to be made if you don't like a certain, like, both candidates. Would it be the smart decision not to vote instead of trying to pick between the lesser of two evils?
Good point. That you wrestle with that no matter what. I'll go back to what I said to Aaron, or said when we first started. I'm not a big politician person. There's a few out there I like or support, but another option is, of course, besides voting for the two, is to write in.
There you go.
So over at my school, election day, we always go to the local voting place, walk down during class, and this guy Steve always tells the kids, oh, if he hasn't talked to you yet, I'll explain it. And so they talk about write-in candidate. But then there's people out there that say, well, you're wasting your vote. But the bottom line is you're given that responsibility, and it's your choice how you act on it. And if you choose not to, that's fine. But if it becomes a snowball effect where, well, okay, so-and-so's not voting, so I'm not going to vote. And then the next thing you know, you go from 2 or 3 not voting to 10, 20, 30, what have you. And a great example is a few years ago when Governor Cuomo, I want to say it was this last election when he was up, Governor Cuomo, as much as upstate complains and so on and so forth, if you look at the numbers, the people of upstate did not come out and put their money where their mouth is and voted. And I'm willing to bet that if they had voted, he may not have won, or it would have been a lot closer besides.
So Brandon, I would suggest to you that your individual vote does not really matter. You're not going to sway an election likely on your one individual vote. What matters is the groupings and the people that you represent. So I know I have done a lot of work with my local union, and they can get the voter rolls of who voted. They don't know how you voted, but they know who voted. And so then they will look and say, okay, we know that this is a politically active individual. We want to make sure that we target them and look at them. So if you are a minority group, do you go out and vote? They'll look at, oh, this minority group didn't vote last year, so they will no longer think that that minority group is important. Or your question about, or was it yours or somebody else, about 16-year-olds. So that 16-year-old grouping is what's going to be important. Do they vote? Now, that individual person who's 16 voting, well, that doesn't really matter, but they're representing that 16-year-old group would. Or gender, are you a male, female? Are you voting representing your grouping? That's where it becomes important.
Eric,
Can I say
would
something?
you like to know why we chose Election Day to be in November?
Why?
I looked it up. The states were allowed to hold, wait. It has to do with agrarian stuff. People usually had to travel to vote, and they would have church on Sunday, and they would have market, take things to market on Wednesdays. So they needed a day of travel, so it was going to be Tuesday. And the harvest is, you can't have an election during the summer when you're tending to the fields and the crops and stuff. So they would have to have it on a Tuesday. Because they would need time to move from place to place where they're voting. Interesting.
Very interesting.
I saw it on
And it's
History Channel.
after the harvest season. Although, again, I wonder if there would have been arguments from the north, because clearly that benefits this. Well, it would have a stronger benefit on the southern states. We did have quite a few farmers up in this region as well, but that's very interesting.
So, Erin, the other thing I wanted to just say about the issue of not voting if you think there's not a good choice, the way I look at that is that if I show up at the polls and I sign in to vote, that doesn't mean that I have to cast a vote for either one of the candidates. And so for myself, even though it doesn't matter in the end, I feel like my voice was heard, that I'm not voting for anybody.
Absolutely. I would agree with you.
It does count in that respect.
Good point.
They found, they actually looked at ballots, especially in Wisconsin and Michigan, and they found that a lot of people voted down ballot, but they didn't vote the top line, because people were like, okay, pick your poison, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. And for some people, they just couldn't square doing that, voting for either one of them. So some people left the top slot empty, and then they voted their conscience. Some people are going to go in and they're going to vote for Bernie Sanders. Is Bernie Sanders going to win? No, but at least when you had a choice to vote, you decided that you like Bernie Sanders. And maybe it is a moral issue. I don't know why you, I don't know what your beef is between any one of the candidates, and it's not mine to say, but you have to make the decision for yourself. And, you know, in New York, it's not going to probably have a huge impact. If you live somewhere like Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, 75,000 votes decided the election. So, I mean, we could take a look at Florida and see 537 votes between Bush and Gore. I used to have that Time magazine cover right on my wall, and it's just like, no one says you have to vote for a candidate for president. I struggled myself on one of my elections. I went in thinking I was going to vote for another candidate, and I went in and I voted for someone else. Because I know what the thing that sealed the deal for me, though? Just couldn't vote for the vice presidential candidate.
Oh,
I
interesting.
had a problem with that.
Yeah, I voted for my son as president in one election and my other son as governor in another election, because I wanted to go in and say, yes, I'm willing to vote, but I do not like any of the candidates that are being offered to me.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers your question, Brandon. It's really about who you represent and what you represent when you go in.
Okay, thank you.
So Sam, what did you want to add?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, why do you think it is that like the media and people stress voting every 4 years so much when voting every 2 years is just as important? Like,
Excellent point.
why is it this like almost? It seems like it's like this like inconspicuous information that like voting every other year is like really important. It seems like not a lot of people know that. I'm just wondering why you guys think that is.
I would extend that also to local elections. I know in my village, when I voted last Tuesday, when I went, after the polls had been open for a few hours, I was voter number 13. And yeah, like less than 100 people voted in total. So every election is just as important as the next if you want to have say in the leadership. That's a great question.
Yeah, like you said, like every year also you can do like every single year you could do like your local elections, and it just seems like it just seems like the media, I might be the media, but everyone, it just portrayed as like, all right, let's vote on the president and that's it, when that's really not what we like. Voting on the legislative branch is just as important as the executive.
That is true.
Very good
You
point.
also have many state races every 2 years that can be as important as the every 4-year election.
Exactly, and it seems like nobody. It just seems like that's like everyone's just like, let's vote. The president election's coming up. Like, am I voting or not? But like every other year is still really important.
You know, we saw a little bit of that shift a little bit though in 2018. We saw a midterm election that was a little bit had not a little, a lot more turnout.
Is it the effect of do you think it's the effect of like even social media, the fact that more people are just the information is like instantaneous now, so people are just more aware or cognizant of the fact that their election is coming up?
I'm not really sure. You see, the crazy thing of it is politics are local. All politics are local. People are usually looking on the news, and like people like read the Daily Star, all have their own little ideas about things. I want to tell you about an election that happened last night, or was it the night before? What is today? I don't even know my
Thursday.
Okay. It was Tuesday. It was Tuesday in Cooperstown. You guys see about the Cooperstown vote for the trustee? They had 2 openings for a trustee, and there was a guy that was the head of the Republican. I don't even know if he was Democrat or Republican who won. Then there was a guy who had a vote, and then there was a third candidate. And before they opened the absentee ballots, they were, one was ahead of the other. They opened the absentee ballots, and the number 2 and number 3 candidate were tied. They both had 272 votes.
Interesting.
So, I mean, in small elections, it can make a big deal. Like if some people, like if someone had it in their mind to write me in for something in Richfield Springs, I could likely get in. Don't write me into anything, please.
My guess is that the national elections are coalescing kind of events. And so then it's easier to mass market how important voting is at that time, because it is being covered a lot. But I would agree with you that the other elections are equally as important.
And I can just tell you one thing. Full disclosure, I'm on the Otsego County Democratic Committee. It's really hard to fund these elections. Like we sit and we don't have a great budget, and we try to help out the candidates. I'm pretty new. I've only been on the committee for about a year, but it's hard to try to get money to fund these candidates. And sometimes in some parties, it's hard to get a candidate. That's why the Democratic Party is always knocking on my door every year asking if I'll run. And I won't run. As long as it's Twitter, I'm not running. That's the way it is. But they always try to get me to run because they have a lack of participation at the local level. I think people should get involved any way they can. And I felt that push too. And when they asked me if I wanted to run for Congress, I said, no, I'm not running for Congress. But when they asked me if I wanted to be a candidate, they keep on asking me, I say, wait till I get tenure at Oneonta. or I shut down my Twitter.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. What aspect or ideas of the Constitution impact your life personally? Now we'll go with Nicole first.
Right to vote. If you hadn't noticed, I am a big voting person. I've registered over 1,000 people. I bet you have do you register people, Jim?
No, I take that back. When I taught seniors, I did. I don't teach seniors anymore, but
Yeah.
We spent time on the parties and political philosophies, trying to get them to see that it was rather blurred, even though there are some differences and such per se. So I've done registration.
Yeah, I've registered well over 1,000 people at this point. And it just means a lot to me. So that impacts me the most because I try to register people who are new to voting, and that is with the 26th Amendment. That's why I usually register people on Constitution Day. There's 2 days, Constitution Day, and I told my classes today, March 23rd, which was when the 26th Amendment was enacted. And they gave 18-year-olds the right to vote. So it's like a symbolic thing for me. So voting, I try to get people to get active in government and participate in government. And I try to, that's the voting part's really.
How long is this? I know. Why don't you give us what?
Megan, did you want to add something?
No, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Jim, what did you want to add?
I would say I'm a big Bill of Rights guy, and Amendment 1, speech, press, religion, petition, assembly, and I talk that up every chance I get. And I'm known around my school for not being afraid to say what I think and stuff. I'm not I'm not a blunt person, so I am diplomatic when I say what I say, but I walk the talk. So I would say Amendment 1 for sure.
One thing that I used to do with my students too, it was like a Constitution thing. I'm like, and it's not so, it didn't hit so close to home back then. I was like, the United States is in crisis. We have to redo the Constitution. Pick 5 amendments that we want to keep in the interim and explain why you chose the 5 amendments that you did to preserve the Union. And when the students did that, they got all into it. And then I'd play devil's advocate. But I'm like, so you don't want African Americans to have the right to vote? Like, how do you determine which ones are more important than others? And it really opens your eyes to just how important, well, most of them, like prohibition. We can no.
Those darn temperance movement people.
I know. Lemonade Lucy. Oh my gosh.
Well, it was a pretty serious issue at the time, though.
It really was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Progressive era went a little too far.
I didn't realize the extent to which alcohol was so freewheeling back in that day, and how much they drank. I forget what the statistic was of the amount, but it was kind of crazy, the amount of alcohol they were drinking. So, all right, here's a good one. What is your favorite amendment and why? And we hope that some of the students will throw in their ideas. We'll start with Jim.
Hands down, Amendment 1. You got the big 5 freedoms there. It's going to affect you one way or the other. So, Amendment 1.
Okay. Nicole? I'm a big First Amendment person, really. And it comes to the point where even if some people have some abhorrent views, we have the First Amendment. Yeah. And though I don't agree with the word they're saying, I'll defend my right to, till my death, the right to say it, or paraphrasing Voltaire. I think that it's an important right, and I think that some people take advantage of it, and there are some exceptions to that, like you can't slander, libel, you can't vulgarity is one thing you can't do in some cases, but there are certain protections, and I like that too. But if I'm going to stay on type, I'm going to say 19 Amendment. Anyone with me? The 19th Amendment's important. And 19th Amendment is the
right for women to vote.
right for women to vote. Yes, sirree. So that's why I'm a big fan of the 19th Amendment. And the nice thing about what people need to understand about these big changes too in the government, suffrage started as a state's issue. It was like a state is labs thing. They started to have states allowing women to vote. And then it went across and it started to build steam. We see the same thing. I find, and I get picked on about this because I think I'm a pretty big moderate, actually. People think I'm all liberal. I'm a pretty big moderate. But I think that any like real significant change, there was an uphill battle. We saw it with gay marriage. We saw it with the women's right to vote. And I reflect back on Seneca Falls, and when they read the Declaration of Rights, and they said all men and women are created equal, there was an audible like gasp that they said that. And I don't know, I'm just really, women's rights is just a really important thing to me.
Anybody from the...
And I could go back further even from Seneca Falls and give Abigail Adams credit. And John Adams, even though he listened to her, he did not listen to her. And if he had, who knows how it would have turned out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope that people not only, because I don't think that people really, they should know about the first ladies. They have done some really like remarkable things. And Abigail Adams, absolutely.
I was a John Adams guy long before HBO and David McCullough's book.
Same.
Nobody from the audience has any favorite amendments?
Oh, come on, guys. What's your favorite amendment?
All right, Cameron.
Well, this kind of ties into what you said before. I think the 10th Amendment kind of gets overlooked because a lot of things start at the state level, and then it kind of builds it up, just like you just said. So,
good choice. Rarely touched. I like it.
Waid approves. Good job. Good job.
Right.
I think that people, and this is a misconception, going back to the misconceptions too. There's certain things, and it drives me nuts. Like when people were talking about repealing Common Core, and President Trump was like, I'm going to repeal Common Core. Why did I shake my head at that? Who adopted the Common Core? Was it the states or was it the federal government? Under the 10th Amendment, the states have the right to deal with their own education, or things that are not mentioned in the Constitution. It goes to the states. And the federal government's not going to outlaw Common Core. The states, it's up to the states to decide how they're going to do their education, with or without Common Core or whatever.
Okay, Evan, what did you want to add?
I just wanted to say, like, my favorite amendments. I actually have three. It's the Reconstruction amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Yes.
Because like our nation's built on like all men are created equal, and like as you said before, like African Americans only counted as 3/5 of a person. So to formally recognize African Americans as formerly enslaved Africans as like just regular human beings, I think that's a very big step, and a big step towards like America, towards our democracy.
Right on, Evan. Good job. I like that, and I'm going to revise my answer. I have three favorite amendments. The 1st, the 19th, and the 14th, equal protection under the law. There's a lot of, that covers a lot of stuff, the 14th Amendment. And we see a lot of the civil rights things that have happened from like Obama on. A lot of it has been a 14th Amendment issue. Gay marriage being legalized, 14th Amendment issue too.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned the Civil War amendments, because I was going to mention that myself if nobody brought it up, because without them, it doesn't apply to so many, the Constitution doesn't apply to so many people without them. All right, so who is the most influential framer? So this is really kind of plugging those who have some deeper knowledge on the Constitution itself. Nicole, why don't you start with that?
Madison.
Oh, you stole my answer.
Madison is great. I mean, and over time, I've really, really grown to really appreciate James Madison. I would love to pick his brain. I think he is overlooked in history a little bit too much, because he's the father of our Constitution. So, you know, thanks a lot, Jimmy M, because I'm a big fan of James Madison.
Jim, I would think that you would agree with that one, huh?
Oh, absolutely. But I will say, and I was just talking about him with one of my kids earlier today, Madison would be number 1 on my list. My number 2 would be Governor Morris. And part of that is with his New York connection. I would say Governor Morris. If I couldn't get to James Madison because Nicole's got him, then I'd put Morris aside and talk to him.
Couldn't an argument be made for the value of George Washington? Although he doesn't really say much, right? He does preside over it and sets a certain tone. And can the Constitution be created without his presence?
Well, that's the beauty of history when you play the what if game.
Yeah.
What if Washington had never existed? You know, what would have happened? So, you know,
yep.
Washington's a factor.
Yeah, Washington. But with James Madison, though, he's also the author of one of my other favorite documents, and that's Federalist Number 10.
Yeah.
Do we know Federalist Number 10, my friends? This is the brilliant piece of work where they say, watch out for factions. People like this. Not that I argue with people online, but we were arguing about blind partisanship. And Madison talks about that in Federalist Number 10. I mean, Washington did too. He said to watch out for political entanglements and things, but it's like these geniuses come together and say, hey, avoid this stuff. And we're like, nah, we're good. And now look sometimes where we are.
I think my favorite quote of his is, if all men were angels, no government would be necessary.
Exactly.
Good one.
So I think this is the last question that we have here. No notes were recorded other than those by James Madison, and I don't think it's clear that he recorded them during session. Was this wise? Is this good for our country? Should they have provided more notes? What do you think, Nicole?
No notes were recorded. Wait.
During the actual convention itself, you know, it was very secretive. Wouldn't it be nice to know what the framers had actually thought about?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. It's like we go round and round in circles and circles, years after years, decades after decades, and we just will never know the deliberations through that. Could you imagine like how interesting it would be to have a conversation between these brilliant men? Oh my goodness. But I think that it would have been, we wouldn't have so much debate over certain, I'm thinking.
Exactly. That's what I think too. If they had had more people recording it, it might have gone differently.
Yeah.
Which is why they said they didn't want people recording it, right? They wanted people to be able to think freely and not be worried about what people back home were going to say. So they,
right.
intentionally were very quiet on it, but wouldn't it be nice if we had the records now? Maybe if we had Richard Nixon back then, things would be different. What's the people in the audience think? Would you like to have had notes?
Why not? Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Great. Oh my goodness. Just to know the rationale, then it would take away so much of this debate on all this stuff. And you know what? I'm a modder. I worked at Remington Arms. My education was paid for by Remington Arms. So, you know, I'm not personally in favor of guns, you know, but I think that if I went back and James Madison gave me a rationale and it made sense to me, then I'd be like, fine, I'm cool with it, just as long as James Madison said so.
Cameron has his hand raised. What do you want to add, Cameron?
No, I just don't know how to lower it.
Oh, okay. And Evan, did you have a question, or is that left from before?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add on. I would agree with you and say like there would be like no notes, because like people should be able to think for themselves. Like the government should I feel like the government shouldn't, you know, influence your decisions really. Like piggybacking off like of what you said earlier, you know, I would make the argument that no, like no notes should have been, like they were right in making no notes so that people can like think for themselves and interpret it the way they want to interpret it.
Interesting. Maybe we should do that with more of our meetings, have no notes.
Oh god, and then some people can just hit record on Zoom, and then we can look at ourselves on Twitter. Professor fails. No pressure. I hope people record me. I don't care.
Well, did anybody have questions? Any other questions? That was the end of the questions that I had raised, but don't know if you guys have questions. Would love to hear from you guys.
Well, let me ask you guys something, because it's interesting, because we're doing government next week, starting in methods. What was your favorite way of learning about the Constitution in high school? Did you do something that stuck out in your mind?
In all honesty, not there's nothing too particularly exciting when learning the Constitution or the Articles of Confederation. Like we had our Constitution Day that was run by Mr. Scott, where we'd all go down to the little theater, see his presentation. Other than that, it was really just kind of lectured notes.
It was a big to-do. I gave everybody stickers, and oh my goodness, it was like a party. But most people.
I know, and in my school when it was actually elementary school, we would have or wanted something about the Constitution, we would make our own Constitution, but it was like along the lines of what we knew in elementary school. We would like dip it in like coffee to make it look like it and everything, like frame it.
Yeah, okay.
I had my AP class declare independent from the despotic Queen Nicole.
I like that.
Wow. Yeah. It was a fun, they loved it too.
In my high school, we actually did have like a kind of scavenger hunt thing, and my teacher would put on the board like who has the power to do this, or is this constitutional, and we would have to go through all the articles and then pinpoint where exactly it said, oh, this gives President so-and-so power, or if it was unconstitutional to do so. So it was actually interesting. I actually learned from it.
I think that it's a nice way to introduce people to looking through the Constitution, and they figure out, it's like, okay, this is about the president, so it's going to be, you know, in this article. My light keeps on going off and on. Weird. I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh yeah, but I have people, number one thing I have them look up is the definition for treason. That's a big pet peeve of mine, people not knowing what treason is. But I think that having a scavenger hunt helps. And what I also did with my seniors when we were doing the Constitution and government and stuff, we did another scavenger hunt. I would say, go get a registration form to vote. Go get a selective service thing. Hey, can you get this? And I was getting them all these government forms. I was like, I want to register my truck. Can you please go get me like I'd give them all these documents and they would have to go and find out where to find all the documents that they would need. They like that one too. It was like almost like an Amazing Race type thing. Now I want to go back and teach government. So what other, did someone do a fun way to learn about the Constitution? No strategy? Because you're going to be writing a lesson plan next week. I hope you can find
I
out.
used to have, I haven't done it in a couple of years because my students have kind of, I don't know, it's always first thing in the morning. So maybe the last couple of age groups have been not awake, but I used to have them create songs. Like they'd have to take Amendment 1 or Amendment 2, whatever they picked, and they'd have to come up with some sort of song lyrics, maybe like a chorus that would explain it. Like I remember I had, it was to the tune of Three Blind Mice. And these three girls, they were supposed to be like the Supremes. And they did Amendment 1, you know, freedom of speech, freedom of press, da 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 da. I don't remember exactly how, but it was to the tune of Three Blind Mice, and it always stuck with me. I thought it was good. So anyway.
I'm a big fan of podcasts, as Jim knows. I've mentioned it to him, and I cannot think of it off the top of my head, but there was a podcast that they actually had famous musicians pick the Bill of Rights, and they all did one on one of the Bill of Rights.
I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, very good. I was blessed. I had a really wonderful social studies department when I was a kid. We learned all of American history through Constitution law. We went through by Supreme Court cases, learned how to read them, how to brief them. And I think it was about once a week, we would actually argue the cases. We would each take a side and we would argue the cases. We had a classroom that was set up like a courtroom, and we actually would have real DAs and judges sit the benches for us. That was an incredible opportunity.
No one else did anything fun with the Constitution? Did you watch any movies about the Constitution? Or about government in general? What'd you guys watch in government? Who are your government teachers?
I know.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is a must. Have you guys seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
I've never seen that one.
Oh, Aaron.
All right, I guess I have to watch that.
Dramatic. Oh my God. 12 Angry Men.
Oh, another good one.
I've seen
12
that.
Angry Men. I had a student, unfortunately, that was charged with murder, second-degree murder. And her siblings contacted me like, Waid, I wouldn't have known anything that was going on in my sister's trial if we didn't watch 12 Angry Men. I'm like, good. So always show 12 Angry Men and talk about the court systems and make it do a simulation of a case.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. That's James Stewart, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Which has been spoofed on The Simpsons with Mel Gibson.
Yeah, I have seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Good movie.
It is a very good movie. It's a classic one to show. It's like such a good movie. What are some other ways that you would address the Constitution in your class? Some of you are going to be in a classroom student teaching in January. Some of you might be teaching government. What would you do? Call Waid?
Yeah.
You're going to call Waid and they're going to find out something to do because they know I love government. But we're going to be playing around with the Constitution in class on either Tuesday or Thursday, whatever day you're with me. And I'm going to show you so many different activities you can do with the Constitution. And it's not just taking your kids to listen to some person drone on, but it's getting kids interested about history. getting them interested in like, okay, now look at this and like, how does this impact you? Little kids are really, it's easy to have buy-in with little kids in the Constitution. I think that where we lose some of our interest in the Constitution is in the middle school ages. They've marginalized social studies to such an extent that some people don't even have like a set social studies. When I did my dissertation, there was a school district that told me they just have their kids read like Harriet Tubman, a story on Harriet Tubman, and that was their social studies for the week. So we've marginalized social studies to just to such an extent, then people are like scared that our students don't know about the Holocaust, or our students don't know about the Civil War. It's like, well, you don't teach them things, you don't show them how to vote, and you kind of drop off on like having consistent social studies education. So we're going to need a lot of good social studies teachers with a lot of good, bright ideas, and we want you to inspire someone who's young to maybe be a social studies teacher. That's a great feeling. Would you want to be the reason that someone's a social studies teacher? They come to me and I ask, I said, why do you want to be a social studies teacher? And they're going to say Sam Iberman. Is it Iberman or Iberman?
Wait, what's going? What? I'm sorry.
How do you think your last name?
Imberman.
Imberman?
Yeah.
Someday someone's going to say, Sam, I want to be a social studies teacher because Sam is so cool.
I appreciate that. I'll make sure.
Like that.
Teach rock stars.
I'll make sure.
I hope that you do inspire someone, and maybe when they think that the Constitution's lame, this Constitution, our government wouldn't exist without it.
That's right.
I mean, if we didn't have the Constitution and it was not working anymore, that would be a constitutional crisis.
We have anarchy.
And we just don't know what to do.
So let me ask you a question. How was the actual Constitution drafted? You know, I can see these guys sitting in the rooms debating the concepts and ideas. Was somebody actually there drafting the actual words that would go in?
I'm not really sure.
Honestly, I'm not sure either. I'm assuming Robert's Rules of Order for give and take and everything. But as far as the draft, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Because you know how we pick apart the words even through a draft, you know, is it really conveying what we meant? And, you know, every word becomes important. And I always get curious about that because as I pointed out to Jim, I always think it's funny. It's like a lazy college student's term paper. You know, you look at Article 1 and it's so long, and then Article 2 is pretty long, and then 3 gets shorter. And, you know, by the time you get to the last one, it's like a paragraph.
James Madison drafted it after the convention.
So then did they get back together again to approve his words?
Well, they had to approve before they could send it out.
Nearly 4 months of arduous deliberations and compromise. So.
Yeah, I guess there's quite a bit of time between the actual convention and then the signing of it.
4 months. 4 months to bang out the Constitution.
Especially since they were half drunk during the actual deliberations, though. Have you heard those stories about how much they were drinking? Because, you know, they were all holed up there. And then I guess after the convention, they would all go to the local pub. And
in Washington was from outer space.
No. That's really a legitimate story. There's the receipt from one of the nights that was discovered, and they had several bottles of wine. And I'll have to dig that up and send it to you, Jim.
Okay.
So no one did nothing fun in government class with the Constitution. Well, don't worry, people. We're in for such a treat. We're going to be doing lesson plans for government next week. I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Well, the Constitution Day continues. What time is it now? It's 5:30. So at 5 o'clock, there is a program on. Let's see if I can pull it up for you. Archives.gov. and they have one on what does the Constitution actually say, a non-boring guide to how our democracy is supposed to work. And then at 6:30, there is a live stream going on with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So that might be something to check out. I think that I might try to get my eyeballs on that. Tomorrow there's going to be a debate. So I provided the link here. If you guys are interested, I'll send you the links or whatever. Just email me and let me stick my email in your chat bar so that I can do that. Chat. Where did my chat thing go? Okay, so I'm going to put that in there. I'm not typing. And then there's one on the 17th there. You can read that as I type. Okay.
Okay.
And let's see. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and I appreciate you guys doing this. And Nicole, I really look forward to trying to do this again next year.
Oh, I love it. And I know that Julia Baxter would love if you did it. We did it every year.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
And for those of you guys who are students and you want your own pocket constitution, I have one here. So when you are back on campus, or if you're still here in Oneonta, stop by my office or contact me through that email, and I will get you your own pocket constitution.
They're good to have.
Yeah, everybody should have one.
I used to keep one in my purse.
Yeah.
I'm not one to play with. I would have a constitution in my purse, like, oh yeah, really? Treason is. Drives me nuts.
We're not going to argue treason with you then.
It is so clear.
So that is one of those trivia questions, right? Treason is the only crime that's mentioned in the Constitution.
It's defined of what it entails, and it doesn't entail not liking a candidate or something. That's not treason.
Ah, now you tell me. Well, thank you, everyone. And Nicole, I don't know if you wanted to close it out with anything.
Well, thanks for coming, you guys. Hopefully we'll have some more professional development things that I can steer your way. I know that I have my my sources of all this PD stuff, and if I know that some of you guys want to do it. If there is like interest that everybody wants to learn something, then I'll teach you it. That's the way it is. I'm all about PD. I love it.
And that's what we are here to help provide. And like I said at the beginning, if you guys are interested in teaching, we automatically open our doors up to you, and you're welcome to borrow our resources and come to our professional development things. I will also throw in a chat here our website. You might want to take a look at some of the things that we offer. Thank you, Nicole and Jim. Much appreciated.
I'll see you guys on Tuesday and Thursday. And for those of you who haven't met me yet, you will. Oh, no.
Good luck, everyone.
Don't switch to English, please.
No, we're a lot more fun than social studies.
Oh, social studies are just the best. Don't tell the others, though. Just that we have like double of everyone in like secondary ed. I have 34 students in methods, and then the next one down is 11 in English. So I have 34 and they have 11.
Wow.
All right, my friends.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Have a great night.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.